Okay, hello, and welcome to this mini series. And this is episode 2 in the mini series. And what we're going to really do today is take the next step after what we did last week, which was analyzing our baseline data. So if you have not watched or listened to last week's episode, by all means, pause this episode, go back and listen to the step 1, which was all about baseline data in this mini series, all about these steps towards sustainable change. So really, what we went through in depth last week was analyzing 10 days worth of my own baseline data. And now, this next part, I'm really only going to share a very small snippet of this next component, which is assessing where you want to build out your skills and really set the intentions of building your habits in relation to your values. And this is something in my coaching that I do within a 45-minute call with my clients. And we dive in to really the nitty-gritty of just asking various questions to support the clients in understanding how they can really piece apart where they desire to go and what that looks like from their current behaviors, and understanding really how to develop and establish their values and how they want to live in them and embody them. And then utilizing that, extracting that to really support that embodiment with daily habits. So I'm going to give a very condensed version today, because I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty of what values are and all of that stuff, but really just establishing this assessment piece. And I'm going to share 3 really fun questions and exercises that can really get your mind thinking about essentially like, what are your values and how do those work alongside these habits that you desire to lead with in your life. And so I did a bunch, you might hear like paper slipping because I did a bunch of my own journaling and answering all of the questions essentially I would have done in an introductory call. But these 3 specific questions were really an awesome takeaway. So the first thing to really go into before I dive a bit deeper into like my baseline data, and I'll talk about that more at the end when I tell you what habits and values I'm going to be starting to track. So the 3 questions that really allowed me to sit with myself and think a lot deeper about where I desire to be is, if I had a magic wand and I waved that magic wand and all my problems went away, what would I be doing in that moment? And this is such a powerful question to help you really lean in and be like, okay, if those things were not standing in my way, like what would I be doing? What would I be engaging in? What activities would I do? Who would I be interacting with? What types of things in my day to day and my career and in my future? Like, what are the things that I am moving towards and taking action on if these problems, these thoughts, these feelings, these certain like blocks or challenges were no longer there? What would I be doing? And so this was just so fun. So I literally wrote like everything. Like, it was just really wild to see how much a lot of perfectionism can play into this, because when we remove the problems, we basically will say we'll do all of these things. So for instance, like for me, I was like, I'd be exercising daily, eating all my meals, and they'd be healthy meals, and I'd be meal prepping, I would be organizing my space, I'd spend time exploring with Ian and just being a lot more active and doing so many more things in my day. And I realized there were so many components of that where I was really expecting myself to be quote unquote doing it all. And that was really eye-opening for me. So from my lens, it's such a great lesson to pause. And if we're writing, like if we had no problems, what would we be doing? And our list is like more than 5 things long. And we're saying we're going to do this every day and this every day and this every day. That could be a massive eye-opening experience to realize, okay, we're not robots, we're humans, right? Like allowing yourselves that space to be like, okay, I bringing in that flexibility, which I'll tie into as we continue, is a huge thing in that I realized I wasn't being very flexible with my thinking around these things that I desire to do. And in that rigidity that I was living in and believing those specific rigid thoughts and whatnot, I was not taking action. So that was definitely really eye-opening. So when you ask yourself that question, if I had no problems standing in the way, what would I want to be doing? Who would I be? And what actions would I be taking if those things weren't standing in my way? So that's a great place to start. And then the next 2 questions are very fun questions that, well, actually, all of these questions are within acceptance and commitment therapy and really allow you to visualize from a different perspective about who you currently are and where you desire to be, and also taking a spin on like, how do you think others see you as well? So the next question is, let's say you have your mistakenly held funeral and you have people there speaking about what they see in you, right? And sharing some things about you in this time. And so 3 things you can ask yourself is, what would people say the sort of person you were? So if you're just like, you're sitting here and you're like, okay, and this scenario can be also twisted to say, it's your 80th birthday party and people are going up and sharing things about you. Whichever one resonates or can visualize what sort of person you were from the lens of your closest friends, family. What would they say the sort of person you were? And another part of that is, what are the 3 greatest qualities that you have? And sometimes these 2 questions can have similar answers. And another part is how I treated them. So this one was also really powerful because the sort of person I wrote courageous, caring, empowering. And then the 3 greatest qualities, I actually started tearing up because I wrote loving, supportive, and then I was really thinking about the people in my life and if there was any common themes or just like things that people have said to me. And this one word has really sat with me, and it's powerful because I feel like I don't realize it, but others have, and I'm not gonna cry. um but resilient is a word that my oldest friend that has known me literally since I was 9, 10 years old, has seen me go through all of my life events and witnessed everything that I've gone through, has shared this with me, that they really do see how resilient I am. And on my I'm not gonna cry. On my very first date with Ian, we shared our life stories from day one. And just sharing with him things that I've gone through. And I just vividly remember him saying, like, wow, you're so resilient. And these are things that I haven't really realized in myself. And I feel like I've just constantly played the like, you know, playing too small card. all the time. And so I think I'm absolutely terrified to play big and, you know, share myself more openly and just be me more openly. And I think that resilience plays a huge role because I feel like I've gone through things and I've dumbed it down, or I've made it seem like I haven't gone through things, and kind of putting up this front, right? And I feel like I've done that for so long that it's a whole new layer, many layers, to realize, like, it's okay to be vulnerable, to speak up, to share the things that are important to me, and continue to just play bigger, like, put myself out there more. Um, and yeah, so that was really eye-opening for me. And then, my response for how I treated them was essentially just, like, with their best in mind, of just, like, really how I see them is, like, I see the potential in them and really supporting them in building up that potential in themselves. So that was question 2, is if it was either a mistakenly held funeral of yours or your 80th birthday party and everyone is saying a speech about you and who you are, really think about those 3 components in that is, what would people say the sort of person you were, 3 greatest qualities, and how you treated them and others. And then the third question here is, you are 80 years old, looking back at your life of where you are today. So just think, you're 80, you're 90, you're 100, you're in that glorious later years of your life, and you're looking back at where you are today. And there's 3 components within this scenario. So you're 80 years old looking back. What would you say you spent too much time worrying about? And the second one is, I didn't spend enough time doing things like XYZ. And the third one is, if I could go back in time, what I'd do differently is. So those are the 3 components in that last question. And that the first part of that is, like, I'm 80 years old looking back and I spent too much time worrying about it does tie into, like, the resilient piece for me too, because I was so worried about what others would think of me and if they like me or if I'm doing things right, which really brought me back to, like, okay, there's there's a lot of underlying perfectionism coming out, and if I'll get approval for being worthy, and if I'm doing enough and essentially fitting in, and also, like, how I look and how others are judging me based on that. I was very, very concerned about how I was perceived in the world. And because of that, I really just shied away from a lot of things. So, and, I didn't spend enough time doing things like exploring, really, building stronger connections with new people, my own self care and mindful activities, really. And saying no to things I didn't want to do. And essentially getting out of my house and into nature and moving my body, and eating mindfully and healthy. So those are things I would say I didn't spend enough time doing if I was 80 years old looking back. And the last one was, if I could go back in time, what I do differently is enjoy quality time with Ian exploring, designate times to be on my phone and hold a strict boundary with it, be open and honest more with myself, in my business, in my content, with my family, like, just really being more open and honest in myself, and being able to express, like, what I desire and what I no longer desire, like, really being able to speak my truth. And I just added, like, dance, workout, have fun with it all. And my bottom line here was just don't take myself too seriously and living in the present moment. And so I was realizing I put a lot of pressure on myself to get things right and do things, quote unquote, the right way. And I feel like I was always looking for that external approval or check mark or reassurance that I was doing things the correct way. And so from all of this, I realized there is a lot of perfectionism and rigidity in my thinking. And I truthfully, like, according to my baseline data that we went through last week, like, I didn't do a morning routine at all. And I was staying up really late, and my steps were higher than normal because I had a lot of events, but I literally looked at my steps in the past week and they are quite low. So it's really making me realize that I have lost touch with my self-care and connecting with myself and my body. And so, really, assessing that baseline data was just so helpful for me to realize there are certain components that I've been doing well in, and there are areas that I am curious to expand into. And so, I essentially just wanted to start small and very simple. And that's how we're really going to be able to start building that sustainable change. So when we think about that first question where I was like, oh, if I could wave a magic wand, which one, just for context, like nobody has a magic wand. Even I don't have a magic wand as a coach. If you are my client, like I am not going to be there to magically have all your problems go away. Right. But it's really just to get ourselves thinking about what expectations are we putting ourselves that we think we're supposed to have all together, right? Like if we didn't have these hard times, then what would we be doing? And in all of my previous questions, I asked myself too, like I realized a lot of fears that were behind, certain things that were holding me back or the problems I did have was I I really have a very, very deeply rooted story of it'll be too hard to keep up, aka maintain whatever these habits are. It'll be a lot of work, aka like, can I even do it? And, just all wrapping around like fear of failing or a negativity or doing something quote unquote wrong. And, if I put a lot of effort and then I have to remember to continue to do these things. Like I have a lot of challenges with attention. And so I feel like I've had this story of if it's a lot of effort and then I have to remember to do it every day and continue to show up, like even on those hard days, like how can I do it? Right. And so those were a lot of elements that I journaled about and realized. And so yeah, there's a lot of other layers here, but that we don't have the 45 minutes and the introductory call with my clients and going in much more depth of a lot of other questions can really help establish those next steps. So for myself, what I've established is that this is something that I'll be doing with myself, but it's what I do in my coaching is we're going to pick 3 specific habits and 3 specific values that we want to work on and just starting there, keeping it small. And from the baseline data, this can also be really helpful of like, once again, where to start with these specific habits. So, for instance, my first habit that I'm going to be doing is 10 minutes of mindfulness, which is connected to my value of being present. This is going to tackle a few layers for me. I feel like the mindfulness, I'm I'm not actively attentive, I feel like my attention is very short these days, and I am multitasking a lot, and I'm not actively listening, and I can be jumping from one thing to another, and I just really wanna pause and be present in my life with Ian and just being able to connect with myself in that way, and that mindfulness is also going to be a skill, like a cognitive skill that I'm going to be building towards my flexibility with my thoughts as well. So, my cognitive flexibility is going to be like a separate skill that I'll probably be practicing in various different ways because that's a skill I'll be focusing on. But the habit itself of just proactively building in mindfulness to get present in my everyday can really allow me to help support with my focus and attention. Um, and then there's a lot of other layers like cognitive diffusion from acceptance and commitment therapy. And those are all skills that I'm going to be building and sharing alongside in the next mini series episodes to come. And then so my next habit is 20 minutes of movement, and that is connected to my value of being active. And 20 minutes of movement, my intention with this is I'd like to split it up between like 10 minutes and 10 minutes. So getting myself up in the mornings and walking, doing some kind of movement for 10 minutes, and then in the afternoon as well. Because I realize with Orange Theory, I would, not be moving at all and then go do a full 60-minute workout and then come home and not move at all. And I really just want to build structure in my day of being able to do it consistently. And I want to do it in tiny steps first to really build this habit over time. So, total for each day, I'm going to say about 20 minutes of movement. And I'm going to be sharing these habits with you guys on my Instagram stories as I go through it. So, be sure to follow along every day on the ride on my Instagram at soniajmac.coaching. And then my third one is this one was kind of tricky because I realized I am very low in my water intake, and I know that that is definitely a huge component of potential for dehydration and lack of energy and also potential for my migraines that I get. So I really wanted to focus on making sure I increase my water intake, especially if I'm going to be moving more than my baseline. I want to make sure that I am focusing on the water. So I'm gonna really make sure I get 60 ounces of water a day. And I've been on like this water habit journey for so long. So I am gonna be figuring out ways to help myself maintain that. And I'm going to share probably some nuggets on my Instagram stories of how I'm helping myself do that. So, my third habit is drinking 60 ounces of water a day. And that's going to be related to my value of living and being healthy. And I will say, I do have a nutrition and fitness coach. And right now I'm focusing on getting like 2 to 3 servings of fruits and veggies right now, because that is something I'm not getting in my diet. So that one was kind of also on the docket as a habit. But right now, overall, I know water is very important and I am quite low in it, and it does affect all aspects mentally and physically. So I'm going to be focusing on my water intake. And then just separately, I have a reminder in my phone to go to bed at a specific time so that I can help myself build and start my day right, because I am realizing, obviously, as you guys know from my baseline data, I have been going to bed on average at like 12:30 at night, and I would really like to make sure I get a fair amount of sleep because I know that is also affecting the quality of my next day. So that's kind of like a side um habit that I'm going to be tracking. And I have a brand new coaching app that I am utilizing, and I'm my first client in it. And it is so freaking exciting and awesome and so much fun to have this app that I can track things and build out all these different formats for tracking and forms and exercises. And I am literally doing it with myself. And what I love about this is that there's messaging access in this app, and I am literally messaging myself, and which has been really cool to add a layer of like how I'm self-coaching myself. So that's been really awesome. And now, yeah, that is really the assessment process. a component of it that really allowed me to understand the key areas that I wanted to focus on and what that really looks like for myself. And I started to notice the themes of the areas that I really wanted to be active and present and healthy. And so you're going to see myself go through that on Instagram. So be sure to check out my Instagram stories this week, diving into that and giving like little nuggets each day as I'm navigating it. And next week is all about tracking it, what that looks like, and doing a weekly reflection. And so as by next Monday's episode, I'm going to have already a week's worth of data and complete my first weekly reflection. And so I'm going to walk you guys through that. And we'll see where this mini series takes us. I'm really just letting this process naturally unfold and choosing, how I allow you guys to kind of be a part of this journey with me. So if any of this resonates with you, be sure to connect with me on Instagram. And I'm so excited to take you all on this ride as I navigate these habits. And this is also just a great, also big component of coaching, but just doing habits and tracking them with others, knowing about it and communicating it is that form of accountability and really helps build momentum with everything. So that is what I'm excited for. And I am so excited to bring you all on the ride. So that is all for today. And I hope you all have an amazing week. And I'll see you all on Instagram. Okay. Bye, guys.